Greetings, Draugr, and welcome to this Play Some Video Games Spoilercast for God of War, the 2018 PS4 exclusive release. I'm your host for this shindig, Kyle. Joining me this week, Donnie. How are you doing this week, sir?
Greetings, Koopalings. I'm excited. I'm excited.
There's a lot
wanting to do this all week.
There's a lot of Koopalings in God of War, weren't there?
There is, yes. All the Koopa kids. Yep.
And our awesome third host this week, Tyler. How's it going today, sir?
Great. Greetings, Iggylings, because I'm not really specific for all the Koopalings, but I support Iggy Koopa. I'm a little bit on the Morton side too, but that's for a different show, a different time. I'm doing fantastic. How about you, though, sir?
Oh, I'm doing great. Really excited to be here, talk about God of War with all of you. And as you heard at the top, this is a spoiler cast. There is going to be spoilers the entire time. So if you have not finished God of War, I recommend you stop listening to this podcast now. Go play God of War, and then come back and listen to this podcast as we discuss everything about it. Tyler wants to say something.
Even if you're like halfway through the game or you're almost to the game and you're just like 50-50, like, do I want to listen to this? No, just go. Just wait. We will be here for you at any time that you would like. So enjoy yourself. Just hold off, take off, come back when you're ready, because we will be there to talk with you.
So with that being said, if you're still here, my assumption is you have no care about spoilers or you have finished the game. One of the two.
Congrats.
So with that, we're just going to jump in and we're going to just start with some initial impressions, overall thoughts of the game, and then we'll jump into the nitty gritty. Donnie, starting with you, sir, what are your overall thoughts about God of War?
I love it. It's a tentpole game for the PlayStation brand and for the PlayStation 4 console. All of the hype, I felt like it was deserved, even if I didn't start the game that way. You know, with all of the hype, especially you see like those infographics with a bajillion numbers all over it, basically mostly tens. I was playing Far Cry 5, and I was just like, man, it's God of War like really that good? It can't be that good. There's a lot of fanboys. So I started playing the game with that in mind. And I started playing when I was like, that wasn't so great. That wasn't so great. And then maybe got to hour 2, and I was like, that's pretty good. Into hour 3, and I was like, that's really good. And I got to like hour 4, and I was like, man, it's good. They got it. They got me. They're right. They're right. It's fantastic.
Awesome. Tyler, general thoughts, God of War.
Well, the God of War series combined, except for this game, I've put in about maybe a majestic 45 minutes into it. I've really never touched another God of War game. And so I've seen it played quite a bit. I realized it wasn't for me. It wasn't my style. But when I got my hands in this game, even before that, people were talking about it so much. As Donnie said, there was so much hype for this. People saying, I played this game, April 12th or whatever. They were able to talk about it in detail. They were saying, play this game. All the right people said at the right time. I gave it a shot. I do not regret it. This is the first $60 game officially that I have paid full price for in over half a year. This is finally the game that made me make the jump, and I do not regret a single moment of it. There was some times in the very beginning, as Donnie puts them, like, okay, it's going to be this. My expectations were set to a certain limit, which was still pretty high, but then they kept pushing it further and further to where I was like, man, where are they going to plateau in entertaining me? And I think apparently it was the credits scene. That's where it plateaued for me. And I was like, oh, okay, sure. I enjoyed it. It was great.
Awesome. Very cool. Yeah, I have a similar experience probably to Donnie in that I was, saw all the hype, and I was looking forward to this game, and I've played all of the previous God of Wars, and just because I enjoy that style of game. And, as time wore on and I was, an hour in, I was like, okay, this is like good. Like, this is pretty interesting. Like, this is fine. We're going to keep going.
And it looks like Kyle is taking a quick break from the podcast. I'm guessing we're going to edit this part out, huh, Donnie?
I was going to say, I don't have a time mark for you.
Well, I mean, it was within 5 minutes. Should we just shut up and wait? Or
let's just wait for a second.
Yeah, sure.
I think that'll be easier.
I was typing, don't die, you two, and then everything stopped. I'm like, I thought I hit a button that murdered somebody. It's like,
I'm okay.
I was actually, as you were typing that, I was typing, I was going to ride this mute button because my dog just got put out and he's barking his damn head off. So I'm like, sit here on this mute button for a minute.
Just give me 5 seconds of silence and then go ahead and go wild.
Okay.
So yeah, the longer I played the game, the more I got into it and was really enjoying it. So overall, seems like in general, we all like the game. So that's great. But what, let's start digging in deep and talking about the things that we really, think that makes this game as good as it is. Donnie, do you have a specific thing you'd like to start with?
Ooh, there's a lot to choose from. How about that opening fight? Or opening that little opening, and then right there into you meet the villain here in Baldur, and so I think I have a history here. Quick time events typically aren't my thing,
right?
But when they're set in gigantic cinematic action set pieces that look awesome and split mountains, I tend to not focus on them as much. I was completely entertained. That was definitely a point where, because when you first get into it and you're walking around their home and everything, like I'm trying to get my bearings. Kyle, you and I have talked about this game. I feel like E3 PSX for 2 years. Mm-hmm. I did play the old God of War games. I always kind of threw them in that Bayonetta, type of action game combat style. And that's why I played them, because I like those type of games. So when we first started seeing God of War, and it looked like The Last of Us or, an Uncharted, like it looked like they're going more into this Sony kind of formula. Kyle, I'm sure you'll remember, I was like, is it going to be fun anymore? Like,
right.
Where's all the fighting? And like, that's what we go to God of War for. And when we start the game and you start to hear about, Atreus's mother, and you start setting everything, and I'm like, oh no, it's going to be like super cinematic, like real story, and then this fight scene comes out of nowhere and you start down. I was like, oh, nope, God of War. No, we're good. That really primed the engine for like what was about to happen. That's when I got really excited. I was like, all right, now I'm way into it. Where's the next one of these? How do I go find another one of these?
Yeah, that was. Oh, go ahead, Tyler. No, you go ahead, sir.
Well, it's like when I first encountered the stranger, which we learned later was Boulder. The first thing I heard was what sounded like a drunkard pounding on my door, trying to grab loose change from my trash can. And so when Kratos opens the door and the guy's like, "Hey, you don't look so tough," and he slaps it around like a little silly Willy, and then Kratos knocks his teeth in. I'm like, there goes the drunkard. But then all of a sudden, I just get like the huge like, whoa. The dude punches Kratos and then sends him flying over his house. I'm like, oh, that's what this guy is, something else. And then it turns into like, who is this guy? Because I know my Greek and Norse mythology to some extent. So it's like, which guy is this? I was like, is this Thor? They're going to throw Thor right off the bat? And so when we finally get into the fight, and then it's like the stranger, I'm like, oh man, okay, who could he possibly be? And he's like, he talks for a second. My brother wouldn't do something like this. Like, the brother, he must be Thor or Loki, because he's shooting ice. He must be Loki. And then he's gone. He's dead. I'm like, oh, Kratos, you murdered him before he even gave his name tag. And I got really upset. And then it seems like most of the game, in terms of bosses and characters, I'm trying to guess who the heck this person is in conjunction to, Norse mythology. Like, I didn't even know about Freya. It makes sense in the hindsight, but the whole witch in the woods thing, I'm like, who? I mean, every character seems like they have a place except for Kratos. Heck, even Faye, his now deceased wife, seems like she has, a very important role. But I don't even know Faye in Norse mythology. Is there a place there that you guys know about that I don't?
I don't necessarily know if excuse me, if Faye specifically is her as a person is an important role. I think it's the fact that she's a giant that's the more important aspect, and giving her the things that giants have in Norse mythology and how that relates to everything. From my limited knowledge of Norse mythology. But yeah, I mean, I thought it was an interesting, for the first, up until that fight, I was sitting on my couch playing the game, enjoying it, but just kind of sitting there, nuzzled in, like, okay, this is cool. That was the moment I sat up. that was the moment I scooched to the front of my couch. I was sitting there. I was engaged. I was involved.
Absolutely.
The world is splitting like trees. You're like punching people through trees.
Hand in hand, the world is splitting below you as they try to manhandle each other out of the situation.
Was I the only one that thought he was going to take Atreus? At this point, when I first played it, I was like,
right from the start.
Yeah, I mean, because he hid the kid and like he kept asking like where he was and all that, and he was very much Kratos's equal, if not superior. Like he was really giving Kratos a hard time to the point you believed it. I was like, he's going to take the kid, and now I'm going to have like this rescue mission like for the rest of the game. That's where I was going as I was doing the fight. So like when it kind of turned, that did kind of surprise me a little bit.
I mean, when they after or during the battle, they crash some of the roof up, and then they're like, Boulder's like, why is there 2 beds in here? It sounds like he really didn't have any idea what's going on. And then eventually, once he traveled to the top of the mountain, he's like, tracks show that Kratos is walking around with the kid now. What the heck is going on? And Mimir's like, LOL, IDK. And then eventually, even further later, it shows that Boulder was not in fact looking for the child or Kratos in the first place. It might have been more that he was trying to follow Faye and her tracks, being a giant that she is, which obviously we didn't know until the very, very end that Boulder's intentions were completely different to what we were thinking. Because, he wanted to take the kid at one point, but that wasn't until 2/3 of the game.
Yep.
Yeah, so it is interesting, and I actually am looking forward to going back and replaying this game, because now knowing like everything that I know like I feel like a lot of the stuff is going to take on different significance than it did the first time. Because you're right, when the stranger shows up and he talks about like, oh, I thought you'd be bigger, but you're definitely the guy. And then he talks about how they're supposed to be so enlightened and all these things, which obviously could fit Spartans, but then you figure out at the end that clearly he was probably there looking for Faye. He was not there looking for Kratos, and probably didn't even really know Kratos was there. He was there for a different reason.
Absolutely.
The search for the foresight and all that good stuff for Odin. So it is really interesting about how at the time, everything he says, you're like, well, yeah, of course, that totally makes sense. And you're like thinking like Kratos is thinking in that scenario of like, oh crap, he knows who I am. But actually, he has no idea who you are. He's just like, okay, I'm here for this thing. I was told someone here has this foresight. I guess it must be you because you're pretty big.
I mean, that does make sense because the Norse gods, I'm sure they knew about the Greek gods to some extent. And so I thought about, Norse gods, being barbaric warriors that, follow battle until their death versus the hoity-toity, I sit on the top of a mountain and, I like to fly as an eagle and have sex with women and create a bunch of mortal demigods. They're like, oh, you're the fancy gods. Well, we're the top dog. We're the animal house of gods over here. And I took it as that. I
don't know anything about either, really. I mean, outside of like my base history of Greek mythology in like middle school, I kind of came into this. The most I knew about Norse mythology was Thor was in the Marvel movies. And the reason is that I've been watching these movies. So, and I'm sure we can save this for a point later on, but this game actually had me looking up like wikis of like Norse gods. I was like, all right, I need to know more about this person. How do they make this fit? And don't they already have a God of War? Like, so how does Kratos fit in here? Like, I kept kind of going down in these other paths, which honestly I think is a tribute to how good the story is, that I was compelled to know more. I was like, all right, now I need to know who is she and what is she supposed to be doing? Right. How does it differ? How does it differentiate? But back to Baldur and that first thing, what a great character and great actor. Like, what a great performance. Every time Baldur speaks, like I'm on like the edge of the couch. I want to hear everything he has to say.
Meth, but he knows he's on meth and he's good at it. He's a professional meth head.
He's very smooth, but totally evil. Really kind of just like this jokerish type of crazy madman character. And I was really
evil though. I mean, we are often depicted that the Aesir gods are typically jerks. They're buttholes. I don't know if we could swear in this. I figured we can't. But in very specific, Baldur has one large thing, a chip on his shoulder, so to speak, and that he cannot feel pain, thanks to a gift/curse presented to him by his mom. And he's been bitter about that, as we were shown when we took him to Helheim, that he's very angry with his mom. then he's been trying to find ways ever since he discovered this problem to find a way to feel again. And I could understand why he shoulders some resentment for that. Maybe not to the point that he's, a complete jerk to everybody, but honestly, I feel like he's justified. He's being told by the big honcho god, hey, go grab this kid or the wife, follow the wife, beat up Kratos, whatever. I mean, does he say anything particularly nasty? I mean,
I only just meant that in the sense that you think of you as fighting on the right side of history, and he's against you. So,
oh no, not as Kratos. Kratos has been made clear that there's been a lot of times where he's on the wrong side.
Sure, for sure.
And even in this one, there was a point after you do kill Boulder, Atreus is like, so we're the bad guys now, aren't we? And Mimir is like, yeah, and Freya's eyes, since she's the mom, you just killed her son.
Mm-hmm.
So, I can see. It feels like he has his own battle that we decide to intervene because he messed with us first.
Yeah, I mean, he does have his own cause.
He's an antagonist for sure. Whether or not he's evil or the bad guy, I would have to leave up the debate, which isn't going to go much further in the second one, considering he got murdered. Which, did you guys know about the mistletoe?
Mm-mm.
It was funny because before I got to him, I was watching Amanda play, and I saw that Frey had busted the arrows, and I kind of guessed why. But when I saw the scene to where the arrow strap broke and Kratos took the arrow to fix it, when I was watching Amanda, I was like, "Oh, I know what's gonna happen here. They're gonna find out right there." And sure as heck, Boulder punches the single mistletoe arrowhead, pierces him, and gets rid of the curse. And I was like, so good.
Wow, look at that. All of that went right over my head. I wasn't tracking anything about the arrows or anything like that. As a matter of fact, when Freya crushes like the original batch, I was like, what is with these arrows? I don't understand.
Weird because
why does she hate these arrows so much?
And once she said that, I will, that's my son, I'll do anything to protect him. And then, Mimir starts talking about how he essentially can't tell the one secret he knows. Like watching that one cutscene just slightly put in, it didn't make sense. I realized it was going to be of great importance because they did it just for the heck of it. Because usually when something like that happens, it's usually after a fight or something like that, just to show a little bonding. It was just out of the blue. Walked out of the mountain, my strap, and was like, let me fix it, you dummy. And he uses the arrowhead. And I was like, that doesn't make sense, because why would he use an arrowhead? You could just tie it together. Everything. Great importance right there. It was a good job for us. Them to put it in like that. I thought that was awesome.
Yeah, it was an interesting little wrinkle. I honestly, like, when he had done it, I'm like, that's going to matter at some point. And then I kind of forgot. Like, there was so much other stuff that happened.
Oh,
that
I totally forgot too.
That I was like, yeah, I'm like, and I didn't know necessarily what the importance was going to be, but I was like, that's going to matter at some point. And then just with everything else that happened, I just kind of forgot about that whole part. But kind of circling back a little bit, obviously we have this huge fight with the stranger, which we find out later to be Baldur. And Kratos is like, all right, peace out. We got to get out of here. Like this, we got to start this journey. We got to get rolling.
Trip.
And this is then where we come in and we find our first introduced to the Witch in the Woods. What did you think about that character, who we later find out to be Freya? What do you think of that character? How did you feel that introduction went? Kind of how do you feel about her role in this world, in this specific game world?
I guess I'm going to go first. The Witch in the Woods, I would say, like, the first few times you meet her, you get introduced to her. I thought she was a great character. I thought she was going to be a buddy with you the entire time through. I would say after things start to get revealed that she was Freya, it doesn't do anything to her character really, besides Kratos mistrusting her originally. But then once it goes into the I will do anything to save my son and even let myself die by his hands, that's when I was like, oh wow, this is going to go in a completely different direction. Now, the way they went, I totally understand. It makes sense, but I was just so distraught with the idea. It's like they had to wait until right now to finally meet up when Kratos is here to resolve this, and of course they did. This is a God of War game. We love drama between god families. But just go ahead.
I'm sorry. I was gonna jump in. I thought you were done.
No, it's okay.
Her environment, like when you get through the woods, that was when I was like, this game is going to be everything I want it to be. Her house, her forest was like
that turtle. Woo!
That turtle
stood up. I was like, "That's awesome."
I mean, we didn't even really talk about how really good this game looks. I'm playing on base PS4.
Yep,
and to be honest with you, when I first started playing it, I noticed like some shadows that were like jittery and whatnot, and I was like, I don't know about all this talk here. And then you lighten up this woods, and you get all of these bright colors, things you don't attribute to God of War, things you weren't expecting. And all of the trailers and previews, I wasn't expecting anything like this, and this was just the beginning, just a taste of what was to come, and it really lit up my eyes and got me kind of more invested. And then I kind of loved like this whole, like she's just sitting there and she's just making up, all these potions. She's got all this stuff going on. She's a witch. She's got all this magic, and it really just kind of added an element to the game that. And to be, I don't know. Maybe I should have expected it because I don't have any of like this Norse mythology background, but I just didn't expect us to have, such a fantasy-like experience with so much going on. Even the old God of War games is very much like, Titans, big things, but not like really with the people that you encountered. I guess if I'm trying to say that right, like you didn't walk through villages and meet witches and have all these other things outside of the gods, like outside of the boss. It was to kind of like go through hordes of enemies, get to the boss, go through hordes of enemies, get to the boss. The fact that I was able to just walk up upon, this thing in the game and have all this stuff going on that had nothing to do with the boss battle, really kind of surprised me. And I was like, I can't wait to see more.
Yeah, I thought her character was really cool, and I also like when they're introduced to her and they had shot her boar friend, and then Kratos is like carrying this boar, and I just love the moment when she's talking about like, oh, you guys must have been like looking.
You shot it for food.
It's like target practice, like
she's like for sport.
Yeah. Like I just thought there were, and that was there was multiple. In this game, there were multiple moments of levity that I thought were really humorous. Like when Kratos is trying to when Atreus is like, "Hey, tell me a story," and he tells the story of like the tortoise and the hare the first time. And Atreus is like, "You don't tell stories very often, do you?"
not very good at this. Atreus is a really great counter to Kratos, even the Kratos of old and the new Kratos, the Kratos that we have now. Specifically early on in these first couple chapters. Man, some of the banter that was going on was really, really good. It reminded me of like taking a car trip with my kids. Actually, having spent all day yesterday with my kids, it reminded me a lot. He's constantly, Dad, look at this. Dad, look at that. You just stop doing that. Go over here, come back. It was a constant of this bickering thing. So it really, for me, it made it feel real, I guess. Like it really kind of suspended that disbelief. I was like, all right, yeah, this is a father and a son. Not, it kind of went beyond that two character, formula. I don't want to call it like fetch questy or anything like that, but definitely like that tandem made sense.
How old do we assume Atreus to be right now?
I was like 13 or 14.
Yeah, I was gonna say like early teens, or like 10, 11, 12 in that ballpark.
So let's say 10 to 13 years old, and in the very beginning of the game, Kratos is like, "Can you hunt?" Like he's been here with Faye presumably for over a decade. And he doesn't know that his son can hunt or not. It's like, where has Kratos been this entire time? Has he been brooding in the attic? Just sitting there, my dark past. He does not know anything about his son whatsoever at all. And he's just like a bald version of Cloud Strife from Final Fantasy VII, just like,
I mean, Kratos has never been a gold star father. I mean, he's never been like really great at the dad thing. So
yeah, he's got terrible examples. Sorry, Zeus, but seriously, he does not know anything about Atreus at all. Besides, I don't think he knows his name until about 5 hours in. He's like, I don't remember his name, so I keep calling him boy. And that's all he does. And eventually, it's like it goes into the stage to where they actually know each other a little bit better, which is good because that's character development. But it just felt like, maybe he went out of the house for about 8 years and then came back when after Faye had passed away, and he's like, "Hey, I'm here to pick up the pieces. Let me put this whiskey bottle away. There's Norse gods around here, isn't there? You know how to hunt?"
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely not, the best dad. It does seem like maybe for even if he was, 8, like it seems like he probably doesn't know as much about his kid as maybe he should if he's been living in the same place with his kid for a number of years.
Maybe he's being cynical and sarcastic. Like he knows that the guy can hunt a little bit, but he's like, I know you can hunt, but can you really hunt?
Right. Yeah, maybe. So
interesting.
Yeah, so we meet, the witch in the woods who ends up being Freya, and then we continue on our journey and we meet the world serpent for the first time. How, at that point, obviously Atreus has been reading runes for us, and we realize that, hey, this kid is pretty smart, at least, he kind of knows what's going on. What do we think about that introduction and meeting the world serpent and just chucking our axe into the water and hoping it's going to come back? How do we feel about that interaction, Donnie?
Dude, that moment, I've got so many clips and screenshots and videos on my PlayStation 4 that I want to upload to Twitter, but I'm like just fear that all of our Twitter followers will yell at me about spoilers because that seems to be out there in abundance right now. So I'm just like holding them, and that was one of those moments where I was like, ugh, I gotta tell somebody about this giant snake in this game. Like, there's this giant snake, and it's like it just goes as far as you can see. And oh man, it was awesome. That was, and once they kind of set that up with the whole lake, that's when I was like, wow, like so this is how the game is going to work. We're going to go to all this different stuff where everything is kind of connected here, which is a testament. I mean, because we've been playing the game quite a bit before we even got there,
right?
So it was really nice. We also just to backtrack a bit, I believe you also met Brock on your way before this happened, right?
Yes.
The previous president of the United States. Oh my gosh.
No.
If Barack Obama talked like this guy, I would have voted him in a third time.
Oh man, Brock the dwarf who makes weapons and armor for you was
favorite character right there.
He's great. Both of the dwarfs are incredible. But you meet Brock first, and his little monologue when you first meet him, and he's got his hippo thing that he's trying to get across this bridge, and he starts talking. You're like, for me, I'm just like, what is this game? At this point, I'm having a hard time following. We've got Baldur, who's like this weird, like crazy person, Freya, who's like this like really nice lady who seems to mean well. You've got Kratos, who barely speaks at all, and you've got the son who's just running through the woods. You meet Brock, and he's just spouting off profanities and calling you names and all kinds of stuff. I was like, man, this game is awesome. Like, there's something here for everybody.
There is like a maturity rating with language for one character in this whole game, and that is Brock. Like a couple people swear here and there, but that guy has a minimum 3 swear words in every sentence, and I'm very impressed by it. When I first heard him, I didn't see him at first. I went under the bridge to grab a treasure, and I was like, is that a demon whipping some poor slave to do work or something? And it turns out, it's a dwarf. It's a dwarf with a very poor hippopotamus tailed thing. I don't remember his name. Actually, he didn't even have a name.
You love the hippo, right?
Well, I don't think it was really a hippo, but it was pretty cool.
You ever notice that you don't ever see it like afterwards?
Yeah, you don't.
Like, did it get eaten or something? He's like, screw it.
He just went off to graze and eat food. He was hungry. He was a hippo, especially. I mean, man, he had to go eat. Yeah, so Brock and Sindri, the Dwarf brothers, the folks who are working on this. I thought it was really interesting how, especially with Sindri, like Brock I thought was great. Like he was some good comic relief. I just thought Sindri was really interesting with like his being so afraid of bacteria and about like, well, which told me about all of these things that live on everything and like how that grossed him out. So that's why like everything is so disgusting to him. I just thought that was a really like interesting way to create a character and have him be like really germophobic about everything at a time where everything is dirty and everything is gross. That he's just like I thought that was great. I actually thought he was funnier than Brock was, just because like that is such a unique way to introduce a character, especially at a time when like everything is just grody and nasty and dirty and like everything in that world is that way. And then here's this guy who's a complete, scared of germs. He's terrified of them.
He was ridiculous to some extent. There was a gear that had dropped near him and it rolled near Atreus, and Atreus was like, oh no. And the guy's like, what, did you put your mouth on that? It's like, it's a gear the size of the kid's chest. Why would he put it in his mouth?
It's a kid. Kids put things in their mouths. That's what they do. Ask Donnie. Kids put things in their mouths.
That's what
Yeah,
happens.
but a 10-year-old that has helped in slaying a couple of gods already?
If you're bored. Sindri, I felt more invested into Sindri. I mean, I felt like his assistance to the journey a bit more. And later on, I was like, that was really torn by that. But such an interesting cast. You know, it's like a small cast.
A really small cast, if you think about it. There's no mortals in the game at all.
Yeah, and there is no like waves of countless. I mean, there are like the monsters that you encounter, but there are like no waves of like countless like people, like human people.
Any human settlements were either dead or long gone already.
Right, and then you get these.
Oh, there was one. There was the cannibal people that wanted to eat you in the very beginning.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yep. And you get these characters, and I feel like they all have like a lot of screen time. Like they all have time to breathe. And they come and go like in and out of the story, but they all like share like what's the best way of saying this? The narrative is like organized very well, right? So you have like this main storyline, and then you've got a B story and a C story and a D story, and some of them interweave with each other, and some of them don't, but they all kind of connect to the main story, and you kind of experience them all through the campaign. And honestly, from a writing standpoint, I think the campaign is probably one of the best I've ever done. I mean, that I've ever like done in a video game, because it is very interesting that you can go on all these different quests for all these different characters. You can get more story, but then they all kind of come back to this overarching narrative, and you don't really see that in a lot of games, especially games like this. Like I would compare this game to like a Zelda or like a Darksiders and things like that, and you don't really have a lot of that in those types of games. Like even with like the 2-person narrative, especially early on when Atreus is acting like a preteen bratty kid.
Is that before or after he finds out he's a god? Because that part I got so mad at him.
Before it was very Last of Us, like almost too much. Like I'm not sure how you felt about this, Kyle, but like you kept boosting him up and like keep grabbing him, throwing him up, and like he's talking off like some preteen nonsense. And I was like, man, this is wow. The flashbacks that I'm getting to The Last of Us are like spot on right here. And then,
are you just gonna carry that crystal everywhere you go? I just might. It's like, yeah, he keeps making fun of Kratos for carrying crystal. It's like, it's a puzzle piece. Get over it, kid.
Mm-hmm. And then it turns, right? And that's what you were already alluding to. After he finds out that he's a god, it begins to turn, and it really kind of takes a whole separate approach. And just narratively, the story, which is primarily I think my number one thing that I'm focused on when I play video games, it was so rewarding and like enriching in so many different levels, on so many different fronts. Like I was so excited at the end for these two, but also for Sindri and Brock, and also for all these other people. And I want to see what happens with Freya. Like it really paid off well, and I think in a way that games normally don't.
No, I agree 100%. I think you're spot on with that narrative, and I think that was one of the refreshing. I don't know, maybe isn't the best word to use for it, but like when playing the game, kind of like you alluded to, like you would go off and you would do these things, and then the story would weave back like over itself. Of like suddenly you have to go back to this person, and it matters why you are, and you're getting something from them, and you're ostensibly your shop owners are people you care a ton about by the end of this game. Like which. With other games, like you're like, oh, I go to the shop, I buy something from these people. You never really care or invested in those characters. But because this is such a small cast that is very focused and everyone matters significantly, like how they were able to make it so like, oh, now I'm going to go back and see Brock. Now I'm going to go back and see Freya. Now I'm going to go back and see Sindri. Now I'm going to go back, and you keep doing that. And then, we don't have to go story beat by beat here, but then especially when Mimir gets introduced into the story, like he's like, man, he was great. I was like, this severed head's gonna be super annoying at some point.
Mimir is my favorite character.
He's awesome.
Character. The amount of time that I just floated around the lake, just listening to stories. Like I didn't want to get off the boat. Like I'm just
I would just sit there and let him talk away. It's like, this is great. Tell me about this stuff.
There was multiple times
too.
Yeah, there was multiple times that I would paddle to a place and I'd have like the button prompt to a dock, and I would just sit there. And I was like, I could go paddle somewhere else, but I'm just going to wait for the story, and I'm just going to sit here in the middle of this lake while he finishes what he's talking about. But even if, like, they do a really great job, too, of, like, if you get off the boat at that point and go do whatever you're going to do and come back, of how they like transition from that to picking the story back up again. So you never really lose anything. It's just about, do you want to take the time now to hear about this, or do you want to take the time later to hear about this? And I thought that they did that really, really smartly.
Think about if they didn't. Think about if they didn't, how boring all that boating around would be. Because there's really not a lot. There's no boat combat, or I didn't encounter any.
There isn't any.
And there are very few things that you can find. Like, you can hit some barrels and pick up some gold, but like, there's really nothing to do.
Right.
You're really just going to a waypoint. So if that wasn't there, it's completely boring, and it's a large amount of time. It's not an insignificant amount of time. But
when you're traveling the world tree,
mm-hmm.
Well, if you remember, whenever you do the world tree, it's basically a animated loading screen. No matter how far you run around inside the world tree, when you're switching the locations, you got to wait for the conversation to end, and then the world door will open up somewhere. What I learned, because essentially I was recording my entire playthrough with the PlayStation button prompt to record video. If you didn't press double tap the share button again to end the video, let's say you press it once, it will not only cancel the entire hour recording of it, and pretty much that. I would have to start and play the whole hour over if I wanted to record it. I had to do that a couple times. Very frustrating. Basically, what happened was one of these times I had to re-record. I was in the world tree. They said something different. I was like, well, now they won't be able to ever hear them talk about why Odin's such a jerk and such a clever jerk and all that. But then apparently what happens is, if you do not hear Mimir say something about something story related for the lore, it won't check itself off. And so the next time you go into the world tree, it will repeat it again, which I thought was great. So even if you leave the boat, as long as they never actually said it, you will never miss a story beat as long as you go back into it again. Now, if you skip through it by leaving the boat, then you might be kind of screwed over right there. But there is definitely a lore checklist that Mimir will go through no matter how many times you do something that's a transitional property, I guess.
I'm also really impressed with how much of that lore is there, and I felt like every story helped me understand the overarching narrative, but at the same time I feel like none of it was important, and I still understood what I was doing without it. So it only enriched it. It was just like these tiny little like breadcrumbs just on the periphery. It's like, Odin's a bad dude, Thor's a bad dude, you got these guys, but then you're traveling with Mimir and he's telling you the story of all of them. Like, if you didn't want to listen to it, or like if you muted your TV or you weren't paying attention, like you weren't lost. It wasn't necessary.
Whitehead.
But if you did listen to it, it just made it all the better. Like, it just made it all the better. Like I said, to the point where we didn't even want to get off the boat. Story time with Mimir is great.
And it's easy because they had the entire Norse mythology. I'm terrible at saying that word, to pull from. Like, they didn't have to create story from scratch. They essentially got stuff they could essentially, copy and paste to the voice actor. A lot of that stuff is, straight from the books of the entire history. Yes, Freya
That's interesting, because I was going to ask how much of it was
very accurate. It was freakish how accurate they. Obviously there's some little things because a lot of people regard Odin as the great big cool guy back in the day. But obviously, in more stricter sense, if you think of gods in like the Old Testament version of these books, it's a little bit more gruesome, a little bit more strict, and it can be interpreted many different ways. But I think they did it in such a way to where it's it's completely right. My only concern is we did not see anything of Helya. I'm not sure if you know who Helya is. She is the Lord of the Underworld. If you remember what Hellblade, she was that big, bold lady that giant that you tried to fight. But there was no mention of her. There was a gatekeeper. There was a giant turkey hiding in the background, like a falcon-looking thing. But we didn't see anything of Helya, and she is an important part of Ragnarok. We did not see Thor. We didn't see anything of Thor. Thor mentioned got so many times. We definitely didn't see Odin.
See Thor.
Did you go back home after you finished the game?
What?
What?
Yeah. Once you boot up your system, go back home.
I beat the game, and then it's like, go to Valkyrie. I didn't get back to the house.
Because you'll notice when you finish and you go back through the gate, Brock and Sindri are there, and Sindri's like, well, you can go home if you want to, but if you go home, make sure you're safe, like blah, 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 blah. And then Brock's like, yeah, or if you go anywhere, make sure, like, go home.
Yeah, go home.
Oh, well, geez, I went to do second Anvari quest for Brock to where you got a talking ring. I don't know if they up the level of those monsters now that I beat the game or what, but like before, like the first quest, I was doing level 3s and level 4s, and now I'm doing level 7s.
Ooh.
Like things got bumped up real quick. I'm like, these guys are kicking my butt. And I'm fighting more dark elves in that second quest, and they are tearing through me like crazy. I'm like, well, how the heck am I supposed to upgrade my armor and stuff? Like, I'm wearing epic stuff. I want to get to I'm wearing legendary stuff. I want to get to epic, but I don't even know how the heck to grind for that stuff yet. I have not jumped into that field of expertise, and these guys are kicking my butt hard. I don't want to go down difficulty.
No, absolutely. But yeah, just take a quick diversion. Go home, and then we'll talk about that.
No, we could talk about Thor. So Thor appears.
Honestly, I don't think it's all that. I don't think it's worth not talking about.
Yeah,
it's not much. You don't do any fighting or anything. You don't even really. To be honest with you, Tyler, you don't even see Thor. You see Thor, but you don't see Thor.
Wait, you see him flying around or something?
He comes to the house. So you go home. Atreus and Kratos they sleep. So they're like, finally, we're gonna rest. They sleep, and I'm not sure. Like, do they sleep for 3 years, or is it just fast forward 3 years later? I don't know.
No, remember, because when they wake up, Atreus is like, "Oh, I had the craziest dream," and since he's part giant, he has foresight.
Ooh.
So his dreams often are probably going to come true because it's him seeing the future.
Gotcha. So then all this lightning happens. You start hearing the winds blow and everything. They go to the door. They open the door. You see a man with lightning all around him. He turns his cloak, pulls back to see the hammer.
To see Mjolnir.
And then the lightning goes, and then that's it. So
okay, so
arrives. You don't fight him or anything like that.
So we are told that Ragnarok starts with 3 long winters, 3 years worth of wintering.
Which they do point to.
Right. Is that what is suggested in that whole thing at the very end, that they slept for 3 whole winters?
No. What he's basically saying is that because obviously when they get back, they're like, "Oh, we're in for the long winter now before Ragnarok. Like this is going to happen." So then when they go to sleep, it's Atreus seeing 3 years into the future. So like, hey, 3 years have come for this winter is now ending for Ragnarok to start, and then you see Thor.
Okay, fair enough. So it's kind of like a teaser, like this is what God of War 5 is going to be like.
Or 2. Well, I guess 5 if you count the first 3 years,
yeah.
But the second one of this game, yeah. It'll be interesting to see if that is definitely the way they go with that. So speaking though of Thor, we had a chance to meet his sons, Modi and what's the other one's name?
Magni.
Yes, thank you, Modi and Magni. Yep. What did you think of that fight with them? Were you impressed? Not impressed? Because God of War in the past has been known for these absolutely epic, boss fights, and we had obviously, the fight with the stranger at the beginning. We can talk about the dragon at some point too, but then we have Modi and Magni that we fight. What did you think about that interaction in that boss fight? Did it fulfill you? Did it live up to a God of War boss fights?
It was the hardest fight out of that whole thing. Even Baldur didn't give me that much trouble. I even posted in the Discord, like I was having an easy time. Like if I goofed up, it was because I had low health and I didn't have a way to heal myself easily. And that fight, full health, full Spartan rage and all that stuff still kicked my hind so bad. It was like, that was the point where I was like, is this where I finally go down the easy? And I eventually beat it. It was great. The idea of, 2 versus 2, because it's always been 2 versus 1 or 2 versus many minions, not 2 versus 2 boss level characters that have their own AI system where they don't know if they want to fight Atreus or you. Some of them, they might do 1v1 if they want to. They might be they might do 2v1, and they have their both, separate system. They got the one that is equivalent to the Traveler, which, if you guys remember, was the basically the samurai with the giant sword guy. And then the other one had a similar system to a shield drugger with electric properties. And I thought that was amazing because if I fought them both at the same time, one, I got to play defensively and jump around and hit when I can, while the other, I need to play more aggressively and shield bash to get him, open up his defenses. And meanwhile, Atreus, he doesn't even know what he wants to shoot at. He tries to shoot at one of them, and it might not work, and it was infuriating. But then when they do like the Ginyu Force combo attack, where Magni toss me in the air, okay, And he throws him in the air and he slaps down and lightning shoots everywhere. It was goofy. I thought it was great. It was awesome. I loved it.
Ginyu Force is a really good term for that little section. That little
Like,
that battle.
2 people left and they're like, let's do some flashy stuff. Magni, to me. Okay, Modi. Combo attack. Or if they lose all their health to a certain point, they're like, they say their 3 Norse words, Haruta! And they fuse together a giant flash beam to blind everybody. And then, they were just, trying to do sneak attacks. I thought that was awesome too. I forgot about that.
That wasn't my favorite battle in the game. Probably
Really?
towards the bottom.
I wouldn't say it was my favorite. It's the hardest.
Yeah, it took a long time.
I mean, unless you count the Valkyries, but I haven't even done Valkyries yet. That at my stage of the main story. Yes,
Wait a minute. But yeah, with those 2, I did felt like with that one, and there were a couple of times where I think things approached it, but maybe no more than that one where I was like, all right, how many times are we gonna do this? Like, I'm gonna fight you until we like break into this defense thing where I'm gonna pan the camera around and hit some buttons. We're gonna come back. We're gonna keep doing it, keep doing it, keep doing it. So I thought that particular battle kind of wore out its welcome, especially like the way it was staged. Unlike with like the dragon, for instance, it's got all this like environmental stuff that's going on in a bigger area. Where that one is very much like just confined, like right here on this rock, like just kind of against the wall, and there's not like there's really nowhere to go. There's not a whole lot you can do.
I mean, it's an arena, so
yeah, you've just got to fight them. So,
what was your favorite battle then, Donnie?
Ooh, it's a really good question.
He's getting excited. I like this. Excited, Donnie.
I'll tell a quick story, and it's not going to really go with the narrative, but what's the so you take the boat over to you're still in. I knew I was going to butcher half of these names. You're still you're still in Midgard.
Yep, yes. That's the main area.
You take the boat to the icy place.
Niflheim or Jotunheim? No, not Jotunheim.
No. I don't think we travel. Like you go there to get the chisel, right?
Oh yeah.
So I'm doing the chisel
to the fallen village.
Thank you. So we do the chisel quest, and which was awesome. So like where you're not like climbing up the backs of gods, like Shadow of the Colossus so much in this game, but when you're like scaling giant mountains or falling from this chisel, like you still get all of those great feelings again. But on the way out, I see this door. And I've got this chisel now, so I start hacking on this chisel, and then I go in and I see this elevator, and I hit this switch, and I start going down, and Atreus starts talking about how he has a terrible feeling, and it's like this is a prison
here, Odin's secret chamber. I'm like,
what are we doing? And he's like, this feels like a prison, like nothing was supposed to escape here. And then you get in there, and very much like a Zelda game, all kinds of health power-ups are everywhere. And
you're like, this is gonna be bad.
Oh no!
Yeah, when you see a health power up sitting, like just one, there's gonna be a tough fight or a boss fight coming out. When you say 3-4 of them just sitting around, it's like, can you run out from that fight?
So I walk into this room to see the Lady Angel. As I posted in our Discord, I was trying not to spoil it, but I met a Valkyrie, and I tried to beat the said Valkyrie for about 2.5 hours. Like I kept because I kept feeling like I was like, no, I can do this. I'm getting close.
I learned to fight. I could beat her.
Yeah,
mechanics.
I got her down to like that final quarter, and I kept swapping out all of my different armor and everything. And dude, those Valkyries are tough, man. Like they'll. And I had a very similar experience with the dragon that I freed, kind of on the way there. Did you guys free the dragon?
Yes.
You did? No, there's a dragon who's being held down, and he used to be a dwarf, and then some magic witch turned him into a dragon. He's huge.
Yeah.
I haven't seen this yet.
There's actually 3 total dragons I think you can free.
Okay. I only did this one, and you have to get 3. You have to break three pillars, and one of them is guarded by a traveler, and that traveler was the very first like, I can beat this guy type of thing. And I kept trying because I got this like way early. Like I just walked up on this place. Like I was there pretty early. It was well before the Valkyrie. And dude, he was crushing me because when you fight him, it's a pretty enclosed space, and he summons friends to help you. So it's not just a one-on-one thing. And it was then, and I'm gonna gonna hijack things here and kind of
Go for it.
spin the topic a bit. This was the moment where I realized the importance of the upgrade system and the gear looting, which I mean, is really it's a really good little system. Very Destiny-like, I think, in appearance and function. It reminded me quite a bit of like how all of that works, except that I think it almost made easier. I mean, not that Destiny is hard because they've got the light level, but almost made easier by the fact that everything just you've got all these different like subcategories that you can equip and all these different things. But at the end of the day, there is like an up or down button. It just lets you know if like one is stronger or not as strong. So when I first started the game, my entire loadout was like defense and power. That's all I was doing. Is like I'm gonna up my defense as much as possible, and then I'm doing my power.
So no runic or cooldown, really?
I'm trying to take on this traveler, and I'm about to call him a guardian, but it's not working. Like it's killing me. So I start going through my gear and I start trying out different tactics. And this was at the point where, like I was trying to understand the game because I've never really been RPG sub menu person. Like, let me dive into all these menus and sort through these thousands of options. It's not my thing. It's like, can I just have like a equip the best button and just let me go? Like, I don't really want to learn all this. So I started learning it. So then I started to find some of these effects, and I found an effect that lets me boost my rage as a command. So I could just generate rage. And then that's when I started doing like more like runic attacks. I went like kind of the opposite direction. Like this game almost taught me to do something different, to not do what I'm trying to do. And once I could do that, then I went back to that traveler, and I remember I climbed the little ledge, and before I went up that triggered the cutscene, I just sat there and kept powering up my rage. So I was like kind of cheesing. I was like, no, I'm going to go in here with rage, like right off the bat. And that's exactly what I did. I went right in, hit rage, started beating the dude up, pulled his armor off, and then
that's a great
started
thing.
fighting things. Yeah, and
Spartan Rage and shock arrows builds it up quick enough you can just rip his defense off.
There you go. And once I got that off, because I mean, at the time, this is how powerful I was. At the time, if he hit me, I died. Like it was a one shot. Like I was like, you have no room for error here. You better get him and get him quick, because it's a small space. Like it's like a little room. Like
I mean, his unblockable attack could have two-shot me. I think the first time I met it when you're near the blacksmith giant that was dead. You climbed up part way to the hammer. You had to fight your first shielded one.
Yep. And that was yes, exactly. I had already encountered one by the time I got it. And at that point, I was like, and you guys remember in the Discord, I'm like, has anybody fought? Am I not doing this right? Who is this person? Why does he have this giant sword?
Yeah, I was like 2 hours in when he posted that. I'm like, what the heck is? Oh no, my eyes, they started burning because I felt like the tinge of spoilers. I had to run out as fast as I could, screaming.
So sorry, Kyle.
No, that's fine. That's great.
Yeah, the Magdi guys, they were funny. I could have used maybe a little more support for them, like in terms of like narrative, like cutscene, like just to understand more of who they were, because all of the lore that you encounter from them makes them feel important, and like I liked their
I got the opposite actually,
like their dumbness.
Yeah, exactly.
I could have used more of that. Like I could have used seeing it, like seeing something, because they seem like very funny characters.
Yeah, you're right. They could have had better Ginyu Force moments, because Uncle Baldur was with them at the top of the mountain talking with Mimir when you first get introduced by him, and you're like, don't forget, we're everywhere. And the other of the brothers like, we really are everywhere, aren't we? And Baldur's like, shut up, you idiots.
I could have used some of that, some really dumb movie stuff. That would have been good.
Moments like that. And then there was another time where we're going through the mountain and they're just sitting there chilling, and they're talking about, let's get these guys, we gotta find them. Baldur, Thor, and they're talking about the father and the uncle, and they're like, you smell that? I smell dwarf. And it's like, can you smell a dwarf?
Apparently.
I guess so. It's just like, I never considered what a dwarf smelled like, but just the fact he like sniffed in the air and announced that he smells a dwarf that can shift between planes. Again, I thought that was interesting that they could shift through planes like that. It's almost comic relief. Like the first time you see it officially, it was oh man, what is the name of the of Brock's brother?
Sindri.
He's like, oh, if you don't look at me closely enough, I can shift between realms, and it's like you can't see me at all. But I think my favorite moment with that ability was Brock. Brock was hiding like behind a rock in Helheim right after you get the ability to, essentially control the wind or take the wind power. And he's like, give me that. And then he hides for like 5 minutes or 5 seconds. And, Mimiri's like, did he just steal those blades? And he pops out from the rock and he's like, here, I just fix it. It's like comic relief, like, here, I can upgrade your stuff right on the spot, even though I'm like hundreds of miles away in different realms.
I thought what was interesting with that too is when there's like, well, how it works is, you know what? It's magic. It's just magic.
Yeah.
Would you believe if I told you it was magic? No. Oh, well.
To be honest, by the time I had gotten there and all the things that we had seen, having gone to Alfheim and walked across colors and seen like all the skies and galaxies, at that point, nothing. I was I had suspended my belief so long ago that I was just taking everything as it came. I was like, sure.
So let's talk a little bit, because we'll finish up with story stuff of kind of where the story ends at the end here. But really briefly, it says we talked about upgrading, to be able to get the wind energy. Obviously this game, all the pre-stuff showed the Leviathan axe, and that's all that we ever saw. And when asked if there will be other weapons in the game, a lot of people were like, oh, Blades of Chaos. And, Sony, they were very much like, yeah, there's gonna be other weapons. But that's like really all they ever said. What were your thoughts when we had to go back and get the Blades of Chaos?
OMFG. That's what I tweeted. That's all I did. I just tweeted if you saw that tweet of mine, that's what happened. I was like, I can't believe this just happened. They did a really, really good job of protecting that secret. And I guess I did a good job of not being spoiled, because I had no idea. I knew what was happening was important, because you start seeing Athena.
Yeah,
yep.
Correct. And that was when I was, man, even more so. Like I started getting even more intrigued, because now they started doing crossover. Whereas
this was his dark past essentially.
Exactly. And I was I know that like he was Kratos from Greek, the god of Sparta and all that, the ghost of Sparta. I expected, like, I was really kind of thinking this entire thing was separate. Like it's a new God of War reboot thing. And then they start bringing all this stuff back into it. And I'm like, wow, now we've got all this crossover. Like my ability to think of like what could happen, where it could go, instantly became expanded. Like now they've got all kinds of things they can do if they're going to bring these two together. So you're doing this boat ride, which was awesome. What a great scene with the black and the white and the tint, the contrast and the lightning. And I was like, man, something big is about to happen. I thought we were going into like, like some like Batman, like, recollection scene, like how he, like in the Arkham series, how like he goes back and has like these visions of his parents. That's where I thought we were going. And then to get those
falling to the ground,
to get those blades, like when he's like, oh, I'm gonna have to go do that, and he pulls them out, and I was like, oh man, like now we're about to wreck shop. And then you get that power moment where you just get to just unleash for like 10 minutes of just button mashing. I was like, yes, the God of War game I always like, it's back. Let's crush stuff. And then it even made it even better, because once you get through it, then you realize now you have a whole new weapon to upgrade and to put stuff on. Like, and I was like, wow, it's like the game did like a soft reset. It was like, all right, you went through Act 1. How was that? Act 2, let's run it back. Let's do it all over again. It was really good.
Tyler, what were your thoughts, sir?
Oh, I was going to say that I was a freaking idiot, because when he said, I got to go back home, I thought he meant going back to Greece. So I was like, he gets in the flowery boat with this dramatic thunder. I'm like, am I going to watch like a 2-hour cut scene that he sails across, land into the air? I don't know how the heck he's getting back home. And then about halfway through the boat ride and the whole dramatic moment, I'm like, oh, okay. He just meant his home here. And I heard a small snippet about this possibility, and like the way he kept showing the wrappings around his arms where the chains had been burnt into his skin, literally in this case. Like I knew it was going to happen once they said they needed a blade that could pierce the frozen wilderness of Helheim. It's like, okay, so the Blades of Chaos. I know them as the Chains of Olympus, but I think that's because it's like a Vita game or something like that. Yeah. But anyways, yeah, he he pulls it out. I'm like, okay, this is apparently what it's going to be like if I wanted to play God of War 3. This is what it's going to feel like. And I'm like, this feels like actual God of War combat, just swinging around in chains and slicing people up. And I was kind of turned off by it actually originally at first, but Donnie's right. It's like these guys, I usually have to punch them to death because they're frozen, they're resistant to my axe. Now I got something that they're weak to. It was like a little smugness to like, you fools, behold my power. Of course, Kratos didn't say that. He was just, murdering stuff. And it was fantastic.
I thought it also changed the way, for me anyway, like the way the game was played, which I think is more, with the axe, I had kind of used it as a range weapon. I felt like, especially the first part of the game, like with the Traveler, the more I tried to use it as a melee weapon, the more damage I took, and the more like it typically didn't work out for me unless I just was way better, like unless it was the underlings. When I got the chains, I was like, oh, now. Yeah, so like now I was getting in people's face, doing melee attacks, doing combos, like, equipping new heavy and light attacks. Like it just changed the way I played the game, which I think was more important.
And I think they did a really good job, and that's why I'm really glad they started with the Leviathan axe for like probably the first almost half of the game of like you are learning that there's a different way to play this God of War game. But then about halfway through, they're like, oh hey, here's the thing you love.
Ain't no lie. Bye, bye, bye. Apparently, he loves this game so much that Kyle has left again to go play God of War as we speak. He just wants to confirm that the things he said were in fact true. Now, I'd like to point out that the axe, when you're playing with the Leviathan axe, it feels like a Dark Souls light game. It's 1v1 for the most part. You got to dodge and stuff, and it makes it hard. But thankfully, it's nice because with the Chaos Blades, it's more AoE. Like you're swinging around, you're hitting anything that's near you. You're messing it up.
Combos, multi hits. Go
ahead.
I'm sorry. I wanted to ask you because you mentioned with the 1v1 with the axe. Did you like having to manually call it back?
Do I have the sass? Do I have to, or do I enjoy doing that?
Like, did you enjoy? Like, did you like that? Did you like that they had kind of made it to where you have to manually call it back? There were a lot of times where I went to swing it, only for it not to be in my hand, and I was like, oh. Hit the triangle button, because calling it back is awesome. What a great tactile like feeling in a video game. Satisfying. Dude, you swing it hits you and you hear that noise, you're like, oh. But there were kind of like in combat, I wish like there is a part of me that wished the axe would just come back, because there was a lot of that happened more than
there is a way to do that. I'm not sure if it's a skill where if you throw the axe and then when you're battling, you can hold like R1, it'll summon the axe right when you swing it.
You have to upgrade, and I got that. And there are a lot of things like that make it easier, but that was one thing that I did. I don't know. I was wondering if it would have been better just to have the axe come back versus having to actually call it back. I don't know.
Here's something interesting. There was an interview with Corey Barlog about that, and that they had prototyped the axe so that it automatically returned as well, and they play tested it both ways, and they said that it just you felt like more of a god when you got to control when you had it.
I could see that. That makes sense. It makes sense. Maybe like a toggle thing. There were times where like I threw it and completely left, like, and I would just like walk away and like go into a new scene, and then I have to call it.
And you hear
like,
ching, ching, ching.
Yeah, it felt like it took longer to get back to me. I was like, man.
Which is awesome, right? Because then it's not just like this cut, like as soon as you hit the button in 1 second, it's back. Like that's depending how, like, because if you throw it and hit the triangle right away, like you can like it like comes back to your hand like immediately. So like there's a lot of really, really cool stuff you can do.
And on this, since we're on this topic, before we get back to you, Kyle, about the blades, one of the cons that I have about this game, I felt like I was fighting the controls quite a bit. Honestly, almost even through the end. So like I never really felt comfortable with them. I did some things. So I flipped the action button. For some odd reason, I wasn't digging that circle thing. I was like, no, like this is wrong. I need to dodge with circle and action with X. I tried flipping the triggers, but I felt like at that point I was too far.
Yeah, I know some people have done that.
I played it for 5 hours and was like, I don't like it. But when I tried flipping, I was like, oh, I can't do this for another 5 hours to get used to this either. So I just stayed with it. But especially changing weapons, right? Especially at the end, but even more so before. Changing from the blades to the axe, but then I got to call the axe back with the triangle, and maybe I forgot because I changed to the blades. It's not easy. Like you have to cycle through them, and if you're looking visually on screen, if you didn't call the axe back when you threw it last, it's just empty. So a lot of times I felt I felt, and now I'm thinking about it, I felt like I'd click the right button and I would see blank and I would think that I've just got fists. So I would click the right button again and then I would get the blades again. I'm like, oh, click the right button, call for the axe, get the axe, throw the axe, click to the blades, and then it would kind of repeat itself. I'd click again and there'd nothing be there. Like in that regard, I felt like I was fighting quite a bit.
Interesting. As I never had that issue because like the axe was on my back or it wasn't, and it was in my hand or it wasn't. You know, like that for me, I just looked at the visual cue. Like I never looked at the indicator in the corner. I literally just looked at Kratos. And I was like, well, if the axe is there, I have it. If it's not, I don't.
I think I was focusing on those, on that particular area a lot because I was constantly like watching my cooldown.
Oh, gotcha.
I had
That's right, because you switched to more runic based attacks. So
yeah, a lot of times I was focused on that quite a bit because I had so many attacks and things that I was pulling out like at all times.
Yeah, I much more played it. I found a couple runic attacks that I really liked and just leveled those up to the max. And then I pretty much I tried new ones as soon as I got them. But then I was like, well, I've already kind of developed my combat style now that I'm, 12, 15, 20 hours into the game. I'm probably not going to significantly change that because I feel good about where I'm at. And I can take on most enemies competently. I mean, the first Valkyrie took me like 45 minutes. But other than that,
I think he's trying to step you up, Donnie.
Oh, I trust me. I have no doubt. I mean, Devin makes fun of me. I feel often that I'm just not equipped. But I mean, to be honest with you, it was never really an issue until we encountered like that final boss rush, like elevator.
That final boss rush elevator was that was probably my least favorite part of the game.
And then the final fight, like when you're being forced to switch back and forth a lot, that was the only time that I really encountered. Because most of the times, once I got the blades, that's all I wanted to do was blades. Like,
right. I mean, what fight are we talking about here? You said the final boss rush fight elevator?
So yeah, you've got the ship, and then you get into the is it the Bifrost thing?
Yeah.
You start going. I felt like we were going up. I don't know where you're going.
Oh, are you talking about
doors keep opening and like the entire games, all of the game's enemies, you have to
like
go
as you go through the different realms, you're getting the enemies from those realms.
You got the Orb of Unity, and you're trying to transfer the Tower of Jotunheim to get back into the Midgard. And then you had to fight the 4 waves. Yeah. Oh yeah.
So then you get you get travelers from different kinds. You get the frost enemies, but the frost enemies come with the fire enemies. So anytime I was like, all right, now you have to quickly switch your weapons on the fly and act. I struggled with it. There was a little bit too much more button combinations for me.
Gotcha. Yeah,
I've done a dozen times. Don't worry.
Yeah, that part was not, like I said, least favorite part of my game of the game for me. I mean, it was fine, but as far as a low point goes, it wasn't that low of a low point for me, at least. Yeah, but the Blades of Chaos were sweet. I think one thing that's really interesting in that, I've been consuming a lot of information about this game after I beat it, and I have started a new save, so I've gone back because I wanted to experience some things, and I'm still working on my main save to try to get to platinum. But the thing that's really interesting is when at the very, very beginning of the game, or when you get to have that first fight with the stranger, and Kratos throws Atreus under the floorboards, and he's like, I thought I was not supposed to go down there. And he's like, get down there, and he throws him down there. When he comes back and he's like, we're leaving, and he's pulling him out, the camera pans, and it shows you the blades are sitting there. Like
I have no idea.
Because they're wrapped in a blanket. Like, it's there. Like, it is there under the floorboard.
Those
like,
little moments, man.
Yeah, so they're there. They're totally there the entire time. Like when he's pulling him out, like you can see the package wrapped up there, but you don't know what to be looking for, right? You have no idea to be looking for it. So it's like, man, like they really did put thought into like all of this. Imagine that, into all of these things. So obviously we've been pushing on talking about this for a long time. So I want to make sure we get to talk about anything else you gents want to talk about in regards to this game before we talk about the end. And kind of where we think things might go from here. So, Tyler, are there other things about God of War that you would like us to chat about?
Well, I was actually going to talk about the end, but apparently we're going to hold off on that. I guess my concern
Tyler's been trying to get to the end
since the beginning.
No, definitely not. You guys keep teasing it like, oh, after you go to Jotunheim, I'm like, no, wait. I guess I have a question / complaint. Elfheim. I'm sure you guys remember it was where the Temple of Light was.
Right.
And we secured the light from the Dark Elves, which I thought were just flying cockroaches, but I guess they're elves. Sure. But then they keep talking about how, this is the aftermath of a war. and how Kratos essentially is screwing it up. It was clear that the Dark Elves had won, but Kratos, not only clears most of them out, restores the light of Elfheim back, and then he kills the general.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like Atreus asks at the very end, it's like, whose side should we have actually been on? And Kratos is like, eh. And it's like, I want to know what was going on there. Why did the Dark Elves take over the temple? Why did it make it feel like we were actually doing something bad there? I didn't hear anything about the story afterwards. Did you guys go back there to see if anything was up?
I haven't been back there yet, and I'm wondering if that's something we're going to find out potentially in future games as to, because when we kill the general, he says something about like you've made a grave mistake or a grave error or something like that.
Yep. I didn't get any
towards Ragnarok.
Yeah.
Maybe so. So to back off of that, this is my favorite part of the game.
Alfheim,
that scene where he enters the light.
Oh,
my favorite part of the game was right there. Honestly, my favorite environment of the game might be Alfheim. I really, really enjoyed that.
It looks great.
That's really good. That's good sci-fi stuff, man. And then, and also like the elves might be my favorite enemy. They're tough. At least, especially when I first started, like they're tough. Like their flying is hard, and then they shoot that
the
stuff.
fireball that blinds you attached.
Yeah, like it's dark. Good. Like those are good fights. But at that point in the game, right at the end of the chapter, you have to enter the light, I guess, to restore the light with the Bifrost, right? To do that. And so Kratos goes in there and he comes out because there was quite a fight to get there. And then you're fighting hordes and hordes and hordes of elves. And then as he walks out, or actually as he's pulled out by Atreus, because he was about to talk to Faye, like it was like this afterlife connection. He was all, and you're really into it because of this whole story. Faye is like this character that you don't really know. So you're about to get it, and he pulls you out. So I felt that pull, like emotionally, like when he pulled, I was like, no, what are you doing? Like, this is right now. And I was like, oh, Atreus. And then the camera pans and there are bodies upon bodies. The Atreus has been out here defending you for like, I don't forget the time, hours or anything. Cause
a very long time.
Yeah. Cause Kratos is like, I was gone for seconds. He's like, no, you've been gone for hours. I've been here for hours. You left me, you abandoned me. And that was like, that entire scene went so far for me caring about Atreus. And we can talk about the ending here in a minute, but before we get there, that's what made it even worse. When Atreus finds out that he's a god and starts becoming this bratty, evil-like kid that was probably my low point, was just hearing that commentary, because I really didn't like it. And I know that that's the intent, right? But I also felt like it was against his character to just switch on the fly like that. Like that's
right on the spot. It was just such a crazy change. He finds
out he's a god and he's just super entitled. And I mean, it plays into the age, but you've got hours with this character where nothing of that could be the same. And then all of a sudden he's awful.
His first response was, something I could expect. Can I turn into an animal? Oh, yeah. That's what a kid thinks if they're a god. And, all of a sudden he just loses all humility that he's had for the past 10, 12 years hunting deer without his father knowing. And it was just frustrating to watch him be a jerk and start saying, jerkish things like, I don't have to say anything about anything I thought ever, because now that I'm a god, I can be all high and mighty, which is exactly what Kratos was probably afraid of.
And which makes a perfect segue. And it probably is because of the ending. I mean, the ending, it could have been foreshadowing what might be to come.
Yeah. So. Kind of weird that it seems like everything was foretold. Everything's all prophesized to a T. Kind of freaks me out.
Kind of.
I don't like it. I don't want to jump into the end until...
Let's get the ending, Kyle. Let's go.
Okay, let's do this.
So the end, we get to Jotunheim. We're gonna go spread our mom's ashes and finish her request. And as we're climbing, we get up to like what seems to be a temple. We have faces of giants carved into the walls, and Atreus puts his hand on one of the walls, and the wall crumbles away. And you have all of these etchings and drawings of the journey that they have been on, and the journey they've been on, and everything is basically Faye is foretold, like, hey, this is the journey you're going to be on. And I thought that was a really interesting way to tie in, especially the environmental leads about like, hey, climb here, do this, because she's already been there. Like she's laid that out for you to know where to go and how to get there. And you know, everything has been foretold, and you see all these things, and you go up, you spread your mom's ashes, and Atreus at the very end is like, hey, yeah, you know, I just find it really interesting that, you know, why did mom call me Loki? And then you're like, what? Like, and which then makes so much sense, we know, with the very end of the last panel that seems to show potentially the way you want to look at it, either Atreus killing his father or potentially Atreus cradling his father after he's been killed, and you know, according to some, reincarnating him into the world serpent. Like there's a whole bunch of different ways that you could look at that. But yeah, so hey, we've been hanging out with Loki this whole time. That's a twist.
Yeah, that is quite a twist. And it was just weird because it brings into a whole new light, like some completely unexpected. Faye is a giant.
Mm-hmm.
She is either a messenger, maybe a leader, a prophet, whatever you want to call it. She was supposedly put on a mission to follow the prophecy that's been sitting there and, you know, chalked up on this wall at this temple. Because we know the giants were originally in Midgard, or they were at some point, and the Aesir gods did not like the giants, and things started going awry. Odin's son Tyr, Tyr, was trying to make peace with all the 9 realms. Found out that he could not with the giants and and Odin, because Odin just wanted the ability to see into the future because he loves his prophecies. When he realized he was not going to get that, he decided he was going to start murdering off all the giants. Tyr helped the giants escape through, you know, what we saw with the Unity Stone and all that, hid the gate, and then the giants, for some reason, died. I don't know why they all died. Old age? I mean, we just saw them lying there chilling. Honestly, I thought the ashes were going to spread and they're all going to wake up and say, you finally triggered our trap card. This is going to be the next story event for the next game. But they're all dead. And the reason why, we don't know. I'm assuming that's why Faye got sent out to follow this prophecy. Apparently it met Mr. Kratos here and knew that she was going to fall in love with him already, which I don't like the idea. Yeah, I don't like the idea that, you know, she was, you know, not just like this mystical warrior. Because if you remember, Kratos tells a story about Faye. She was a warrior that had all the rest of her clan killed in a magnificent fight. And she alone was, her battle was to live, to defend her life, to keep going. And showing that, you know, he has a son. They was supposed to call him Loki, but apparently Kratos was like, my dark past, Atreus. And she was like, okay, fine, we'll call him Atreus. Which I thought was great that they re-explained the whole story of Atreus the Spartan, which I'm not sure if you guys remember that. He was actually a pretty big part of, you know, the God of War series. And at the end, it's like, yeah, okay, so we know there's going to be a strong chance in God of War 6, I presume, Kratos most likely is going to be murdered off in some shape or form, either by sacrifice or whatnot, and Atreus is going to be a key point in releasing some kind of energy or spirit that we couldn't really see. Presumably by Odin. I'm going to take a wild guess there, stab in the dark. Odin probably has something to do with this. And I don't know why the Giants would be okay with this idea and let it go ahead. Maybe they do it intentionally because Loki's energy is going to kill off the Aesir gods in revenge. Don't know. Well, I guess we'll find out probably in the next game.
Donnie, what were your thoughts about the end of the game?
Tyler has a lot more thoughts than I do.
I'm sorry. I'm really chatty about it.
I don't have the background, you know, of Loki. What I know about Loki, what I know from like Marvel. It's,
I mean,
I know that he's the god of mischief, and I know, you know, he's typically a character that's not one to be trusted, which makes me think that panel on the wall, like with Kratos, is a turn, which I kind of don't like because you just went on this whole journey, and I don't like the idea that we know that he's going to turn on his dad. So I'm hoping that it's not. I'm hoping it's a swerve. I am hoping that, you know, it's him cradling his father after his father, you know, sacrificed or something for him. Because if he turns on him,
he did say that at the very end. Would you? I mean, he's like, would you die for me? It's like, if it was to see you live.
Right.
Yes.
Right. After the battle with Freya, after Freya.
Very ominous, by the way.
Oh, I mean, not to go too far back, but Freya's monologue after.
Oh my god!
Dude, yes. So I'm looking forward to that, and also that they're that last bit with Baldur where they're coming in and out of the scene, right? You're hitting, Kratos punches Baldur and then Atreus comes flying over top of him. You grab him, you throw him the other way. They were so together and so in tune. I would hate to see that break up for some selfish, reason. That would be awful. Which was good story. That's good story component and mechanic if they want to go that path. But the fact that he was Loki, I mean, if anything, I think more than anything, it just made me question more. I was just like, wait a minute, how is he Loki if Thor is, like 400 years old and got kids? Like, what did the Lokis just got here? Like, and I keep going down this path. That's where I really started. I was like, I gotta learn more about the stuff I don't know.
As Kratos said, every question answered, 2 takes his place, and they keep going afterwards because. And I don't know my Norse mythology great, but as you saw in the Marvel movies, Loki was originally an ice giant. That after Odin actually gets away with his fight with the ice giants, which hasn't happened here yet, technically, and maybe it did, he adopts him and takes him in as his own son. And so Loki and Thor are eventually brothers of sorts. So I don't know if that's going to be implemented here, because if you remember, after Magni was murdered off, what's his brother's name? Modi?
Yeah.
Modi was like, I'm going to make you my new brother, because he was planning after they were getting ready to activate Tyr's secret chamber. Modi comes in, tries to steal Atreus. Atreus goes like Super Saiyan for half a second, then blows a fuse in his head, and then Kratos beats off Modi, and it's suggested that the Aesir now want Loki / Atreus now.
And you could see that with like that final scene with Thor. Thor could be there to kill Kratos and to take Atreus, and he would still be young enough to where you could play something like that off. But I mean, can you have God of War without Kratos? You just kill off the character?
I think in this instance, Loki would have been picked up by Thor, and that he would have lived as an Aesir. But since this is God of War and not a complete playthrough of the Aesir style storyline, I'm going to guess that that's probably not going to happen. I'm going to think Kratos is like, LOL, JK, you are not going to touch my son, as he's demonstrated the past dozen times. And I think from this point on, this is where Kratos is going to split the actual mythology into, this is my story and you're not a part of it. And I think it's going to be an interesting spin. The problem is, though, like I said, there's Helya, there's Odin, apparently there's Thor that's mentioned. There's a bunch of other gods that have not gotten mentioned yet that should have been there. I really wish Helya was there. It was kind of disappointing.
I actually am really a big fan of the fact that we see Thor at the very, very end for, a half second, and Odin is mentioned, and things like that. But I'm really actually a big fan that they are not part of this game, in the sense that it could have been really easy to have this, follow similar to God of War games where you're like fighting gods and like doing all this stuff.
After God.
But this is a very small story. Like, if you think, what are they going to do? They're going to spread their mom's ashes. Like, that's still the through line for this entire game. Like, that's what they're going to do. It obviously takes them in multiple places. But again, like, the fact that it has set up the relationship between these two, the way they treat one another, the fact that Kratos calls him son for the first time when they're releasing the ashes, like, it has built that and shown that development. And now, moving forward, we have this baseline of understanding about how we feel about these characters for when, is Thor and Kratos going to fight in the second game, and that's how Thor dies. And then there's lots of theories now that, okay, and even Mimir mentions about how when he meets the World Serpent, when Mimir talks to the World Serpent, he mentions that, oh, Atreus looks familiar.
Right.
And like there's, and Mimir talks about it as well, that the World Serpent has actually been sent back in time, through the World Tree, that, so there are theories out there that actually the World Serpent is Kratos reincarnated, sent back in time by Atreus.
Dude,
so that's why he has a beard and he has white and red scales and like all of these things. So it's really interesting to see where they're going to go from here. Once they talk about how he is Loki and they are setting this up like the entire time. If you think about it, they talk about how like giant is a race. That doesn't necessarily mean they're all really, really big. When Atreus finds out he's a god, he's like, okay, I turned into an animal. Well, sure. Can I turn into a wolf, which is always associated with Loki? Like, they've been setting this up.
Fenrir.
you know, as they go in very small ways, that when it's revealed, you're like, oh crap, of course, this makes total sense. But like, yeah, you know, it's really interesting about how they kind of wove all this together and made what I thought a really satisfying ending to a game that leaves me with a ton more questions. I'm still thinking about this game all the time about like, well, I wonder what this meant. I wonder about what this meant and how did this relate to that thing? And the fact that, you know, at the very end now you go back and you look at that first conversation with the stranger and you realize that no, you know, he wasn't looking for Kratos, kind of like what we talked about at all, you know, and that is why Faye selected the specific trees that she wanted to cut down to have her body burned, was because it broke the seal, you know, that the magical seal around them. So now they were able to commence this journey, basically. Like this was all planned by her. Like she knew exactly what she was doing.
I didn't even think about that until just now.
Yeah, like wow. she knew exactly what she was doing. Like everything makes sense. Everything is there for a reason.
Everything has a purpose.
Yeah, there's no extraneous whatever. Like when you look back on it, everything was done with purpose. And I think in games, that's like, you don't see that often.
Rare, super rare. I mean, it is very much like what a long, strange journey it's been. You look at this narrative, like you said, the narrative is spread your mom's ashes, and you do. And then when you get there, it's such a beautiful moment, by the way. But when you get there, you just sit back and you think, you're like, man, look at where we went. Look at all the things we did. We jumped through all these spiky puzzles to Alfheim and the top of mountains, through mountain. I mean, it is crazy. It is what a long, strange journey. That's crazy. I also think it's a video game. It doesn't necessarily have to hold to what you know as Loki or what you like. They have totally full carte blanche to tell you something you've never seen before.
Yep.
DLC. I know I asked you, and you were like, I mean, have they announced it?
They have not. I think in listening to things I've heard, I am going to lean towards there's not going to be any.
Ooh,
if there was, I'd love to see Hottie and Skull be implemented. Do you guys remember those guys? It's the two wolves that will constantly chase the moon and sun. Yep. I'm sure you remember the puzzle you had to do so Kratos wouldn't drown. But another signal of the start of Ragnarok is when Hottie and Skull finally catch the moon and sun and hold it in place to cause like an internal eclipse or some crap like that. And that's when Fenrir comes into play. Mm-hmm. And I would love to see the idea of, actually seeing Hottie and Skull, be physically there. I'm sure we'll probably see it in the next game. But
I had the idea that I wanted to pitch for DLC, which apparently is not coming.
Well, I don't know that that's happening. I just know that when they originally wrote the game, they actually Corey ended up realizing he was writing the second game. So then they went back and wrote this game. And from what he has said and from what I've read in interviews, like, I'm not saying there won't be DLC, but I think they would prefer not to make DLC because they just want to make a second game that has all the stuff.
I gotcha.
So that's
definitely in a lot of ways. It definitely this game feels like I'll go back to this again. I don't mean it for the Thor cross ties, but it feels like one of those like original like Marvel trilogy movies. Like this entire game feels like it sets up a universe that you want to be a part of. Like that the whole thing is just aimed to set up this world that you want to do more in. The one piece that I was hoping that possibly could get is I would love to see some prequel background. I would love to see Kratos's journey here, or Kratos like on the homestead with Faye, maybe like the birth of Atreus. You could insert any bad dude that doesn't matter, right? And that could be the villain, but I would love to just kind of get some of that backlog. At one point it'd be nice to see how Faye and Kratos's relationship went, because like he doesn't look like the greatest of husband either. Like, so maybe like he had like something, some good special like moment with her, something like that. I think would have made this whole thing really worthwhile.
Well, and I think, and not to be necessarily crass about it, but who says that, she has foresight? This might not have been a relationship out of love. This might have been a relationship out of necessity for her. Like
that's what I'm saying. It seemed like it was ridiculous that she knew she had to marry this guy and have a child with them based off this prophecy, and it kind of ruins that for me. And
there's something there that could be told, though. There's something there that could definitely be told, and that would be great. I was thinking that when I was playing, I was like, man, DLC for this would be great. I mean, I could see him building like his cabin and stuff like that. Like I could see that. That'd be fantastic.
Yeah, I can see DLC. I mean, for me, honestly, like this feels like such a nice package. Like that, are there a ton of DLC things they could do? Absolutely. Could they also just make a second game? Sure, I'm down.
I want more. And you're right. There's so much post game. There's still so many missions, so many things to do, so many things I haven't seen, so many Valkyries to go get.
Oh man, I want to go to Niflheim and then Muspelheim. I still haven't gotten to either of those places yet. They're like, oh, we know how to speak that. Also, there's a room that allows you to go to this entirely new realm that we didn't have to go. I'm like, oh.
Because when I first entered that room, I was like, all right, we're going to go to every one of these. Nope. I mean, like, very surprising. What a video game. What a video game.
Yeah.
Okay.
One thing I just want to mention that we haven't talked about, the music in this game is incredible. And I think that's one thing that while playing this game, I was like, man, Bear McCreary, you made an excellent soundtrack. Like, this is some incredible music for this game. And I think it just kind of helps like put the whole package together, like from mission design and world design and the dialogue and the story and the music. Like, this is one of those things that, and again, I'm not saying this is going to be game of the year, but when you're starting to check boxes of like, okay, what's a game need to do to be like really recognized as an amazing game? How is the gameplay? How is the music? How is, like, and you start going through those things, like this game checks every single box. Like, there's no box it doesn't check, basically. And I think that's a really impressive. It's a really impressive game, I think, on just about every front. Like, it's hard to find. I mean, is it perfect? No. Are there things that, you know, like the battle with the stranger, the first one? I'm like, dude, your dialogue's getting a bit repetitive here, you know. And like, there's a few things like that happen throughout the game that you're just like, okay, like maybe that's not exactly as good as it could be. But overall, like, I think it is a master class in how you put together a story-based game for sure.
Did you guys appreciate the idea that it was technically a one screenshot style game?
Yes.
Everything possibly that they could think of, they wanted to make it to where the camera was always panning around. It didn't cut at anything unless you popped up a menu or you entered like the world tree kind of thing. Because everything else, they wanted to keep as fluid as possible. And I think that transition style was just beautiful. I love it when they do something like that. It's so difficult too. Just the idea of not being able to cut or pan away for some of the animation that happened, like when Atreus needs to launch himself onto the back of Kratos, which is kind of weird considering there's lots of blades on his back. I feel like, you know, there was a time like
he's a god. He can do whatever he wants. Didn't you hear him?
Apparently.
He said that.
It's true.
It doesn't matter. I'm a god. It's just funny because there was a time where I turned and I think I was looking away where I could see Atreus, but when I started the climbing animation, I just saw him like poof and then kind of like whoosh, and connect right to the Atreus' back. It's just so weird. They don't like really change the animation. There's a little jump animation, but otherwise it's just him seeking 10 feet in the air with his legs all spread out to cling on to Kratos' back. And it's funny. It's funny that they have it set up like that.
Yeah, I appreciated the one-shot camera. I thought it was going to be, when I heard about it, I thought it was kind of going to be a gimmick, like it wasn't going to really matter. But I really like from, especially when you got into those cutscenes and the stories and things like that, about how it framed like the things that were important. Like there was no cuts back and forth, like, you know, how it would swoop around, and like you really had to think about like what was in the shot and what mattered, and kind of how it felt like, because like one of the things that's interesting, like, and I think this is really funny when you go back home, they're like, man, we're tired. That was a long journey. Like, they haven't slept.
Yeah.
They haven't really ate. Like, they haven't, like, all they've done is go out and do this thing. And I think that really helps drive that home of like, you start on this adventure and you are just on this adventure. There's no like 2 days later, we took a nap at a campfire. Like, no, you're just on this thing. And I think by having that one-shot camera, it definitely feels like you are just on this journey the entire time.
It's also nice that it's also game engine based, because if you think about it, all the customized armor and whatnot that you wore had to be put in through the game engine for the cutscenes. There was no cinematics, as far as I was aware.
Yep, everything was in it. Yep,
it had to be in engine. So, you know, I just thought the fact they're able to make stuff look so magnificent while having to implement it that way. There was no pre-rendered cutscenes technically, and it was fantastic.
All right. Well, we've been waxing poetic for a long time about this game. Any final thoughts before we wrap this show up and put a tidy little bow on it? Donnie, anything else you want to add or say before we go?
I think this is like my Last of Us moment for PlayStation 4, like the console. This is definitely one of my favorite games on the console. I think it's
in PS3 or PS4.
PS4, like this generation, this console, not like no ports and stuff included, like games for this console. Like this is a standout. And I've always liked God of War, but for very different reasons. And what a way to reboot a franchise.
No kidding.
Like, talk about a successful reboot. I'll never forget the first time we saw God of War. I was streaming it with Kyle, and I was just like, oh, I don't know about this, man. Look at this. The Last of Us hits, and now everything becomes The Last of Us. We're going to be moving crates. Yeah. We'll be jumping up to cliffs. Like, I already know where this is going. And you know, you get a piece of it. It's like the best piece, though. You know, like narratively, it's the formula is Last of Us, and then but the combat is still there, even if it's not the same as old. But you know, there's, like I said, there's pieces of Zelda, there's pieces of Darksiders, there's some Bayonetta here. Like it's really, really good, and I think it makes Kratos a much better character, and I'll just 100 times over, 1,000 times over. Like when I played the games before, I played them because it was crazy, and you know, I wanted to fight you know, on the shoulders of gods and things like that. It was never
a two-note character.
Yeah, it was never
dark past, and I'm angry.
Yeah, it was never for Kratos, and now Kratos, you know, has wisdom and whatnot, and I love. Oh man, I mean, the scene when he kneels down, he starts talking to his son. It provides some complexity there that you can really buy into. And it still stays true to form. Like I said, just what a great reboot. It feels like a franchise. This game feels like a franchise that should sit in the PlayStation library next to everybody. You know, like it stands next to Nathan Drake, and it stands next to Joel and Ellie, and it's no longer, you know, like their B tier or their Killzone type of game. This is right at the top of the pillar, man. Like God of War, PlayStation 4. What a game.
Awesome. Tyler, final thoughts, sir.
It was an awesome game, 3 out of 10. No, I seriously couldn't tell you because, like I said, I didn't know what to expect with this game. I kept myself spoiler-free up until last night. I did not know any spoilers whatsoever. I don't know if it was just luck, magic, or the combination of the two. And every time I got hit with a surprise or someone was like, "Oh man, I'm so glad I didn't get spoiled for this." And, like, I kept it fresh and beautiful. This game is a work of art in a way that I would never have expected a God of War game to possibly have been. It was a button smasher meant to give yourself a power trip as you tear through gigantic creatures that give you moral reasons to not like. And this game does the opposite. It can be a button masher if you will it, but there's also, you know, combat technicalities that you got to respect. And the story dimension between all these characters are so deep in a certain way or shape that, you know, they're not two-note. I can't think of anybody that's two-note. Like the closest thing I think of was, you know, Brock and Sindri, and it's like, oh no, they're not just two-note. They're, you know, they got brothers with you know, sibling issues. They also have investments and friends in older things. They're also greedy dwarves. They also really like Kratos and Atreus for a good reason, and they personally come invested in you, which is weird knowing that characters are invested in you versus the other way around. And the idea that we can have, even if it's just a small group of people, cause such an impact with the story like this in a God of War game. Like, the closest thing that you get in God of War 3 is Zeus saying, "I hate you, son," and, you know, Kratos is like, "I hate you too, daddy," and then they punch each other to death, and that's it. And, you know, there's some regret in a little bit at the end, maybe, but holy heck, man. Just the fact they were able to pull it off with this name on the title is so mind-boggling that I can't help but be impressed by nature. It's God of War, and it's one of my favorite games I've played since Breath of the Wild. Like Horizon Zero Dawn, it's on the same level as Horizon Zero Dawn for me for a PlayStation 4, if not better. And I haven't even gotten, I just got past the credits scene. There's so much more I can explore. I'm excited for that. And I know Frozen Wilds was fantastic, but I don't know what to expect. I'm nervous and I'm excited. I was actually shocked when I saw the credits. I was kind of disappointed. I was like, really? This is the end right here? I was like, oh.
I actually think this game has very, very worthy value post game. And that's also not common. You know, it's not, you're not just chasing more moons. Like, those Valkyrie fights are rewarding. It's worth doing.
There's Valkyries, dragons, side quests with the dwarves, side quests with other random characters, like finding true lost love, pieced out amongst the lake.
These other realms to go to.
There's other realms to go to.
Like there's a journey here that's still worth doing.
Like I know I said it kind of weird on Discord, but it's like it gave like a slight Breath of the Wild vibe where sure you can beat the game, you can take out the final boss and do your final wrap ups, but there's so much you can do that's not even correlated to this that will help implement your experience even further. 17 hours into this game for the main theme, but there's at least another 10-15 hours of gameplay that's not even correlated to the story that'll give a great, if not better, experience, a challenge. Because I was saying, there's a couple bosses I just breezed through. I know that Valkyrie is going to tear my crap up like a son of a gun. I'm not excited, but I'm anticipating it. I want to be able to do that. I want the idea that I can beat those, flying ladybirds that Donnie termed them as. To try
wings of death, man. Those wings. Oof.
The one or a 2-wing angel. No? Okay, fine, whatever. Valkyrie. Dun 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 dun.
So yeah, this game's a piece of work for sure. I think there's one moment in this game that I think sums up how I'm feeling about this game as a whole in comparison to the series. No, not that. That at the very end when you're fighting Baldur and he decides Freya's like if my death means your life, like you go ahead and kill me, and there's a moment there where I didn't know if Kratos was going to step in. I was like, man, is he just going to let him kill her? And you sit there and you wait, and then finally he grabs him and he says, this ends here, this ends now. The
cycle ends here.
Yeah, and then after he kills him, he's like, we must do better. We must be better. And that to me is like the old God of War is like gone.
Yep.
And like
I got really emotional there too. Like I was ready to tear up when I saw Freya and Baldur just like that. It's like there's no redemption here. He is dead.
Yeah.
He's gone. That is the end of his story after he finally gets the one thing he wanted, all his life back. And he throws it away immediately, trying to get vengeance.
Yeah. And then, Freya, has that absolutely like bone chilling few lines that are just like that little. I was like, oh my gosh.
I like drag your body across all the corners of the realm.
You're scared of her, right?
Yeah.
A woman scorn, man. You're like, oh.
And then Atreus is like, I don't understand. He was going to kill it. And Atreus like not understanding what's going on. And the Kratos and Mimir being like, well, that was her son. Like, Kratos is like, I do the same for you. Like in that 4 minutes, there's more like character development and like emotion and everything than in like every other God of War game combined. Like that little grouping of, and to me, that just sums up like what this game is and where this series looks like it's going. And what it truly means to take a character and a series that people played for a specific reason and saying, okay, we're going to give you that still, but we're going to give you a whole lot of other reasons to care more about this game and to bring other people in who maybe weren't into the series before. And I think it's just a brilliant job done by them. I think it's, go ahead, sir.
Sorry.
No, you're fine.
You were saying, I mean, they leave Baldur alive. How non-Kratos is that? Right? Like they're about to kill him and Atreus goes, Dad,
he is
not a threat. We so it's
yeah.
He's taught Atreus, whereas Atreus was I'm a god, I'm gonna kill everything, and that comes full circle. Atreus goes, not a threat. Let's move on.
Yep,
not a threat. And then that's so un-Kratos, but he shows like so much wisdom. It's so much, like he just gets up and they go walk away, and it's just like, man, nothing I thought I knew I know anymore.
Right? Yeah, man. And when you talk about PS4 exclusives, like it is up there. Like I don't know how you could. I think it'd be hard to make the argument that even though as someone who loves Horizon Zero Dawn a ton, like I think this is the best PS4 exclusive that is on the system.
I agree. I don't love Horizon as much.
I know you don't.
It doesn't mean that I don't like it. I like it, but narratively, dude, in my opinion, God of War blows Horizon out of the water.
I don't have an internal struggle on that one. Did you guys? Good.
And I love Horizon. Like I still think Horizon. I mean, I think for me, they're neck and neck. Just like, but I think that. And like I said, in 3 months, 6 months, 8 months, like I might feel a little bit differently. But sitting now, having just finished the game, still going in and doing some of the backstory stuff, like this this does a lot of the things that Horizon Zero Dawn did. Is like it was a world I wanted to be in. I wanted to explore and discover the things.
Combat.
The combat was great.
Good
exactly.
combat.
Like it does all of those things. But it's with a character who I can't get, and I think part of it is the fact that I can't get over that I care about Kratos. And that, yes, Horizon introduced a new character in Aloy that I really care about and think is great, but I had all this baggage about Kratos that is basically just gone now. Like, and the fact that they were able to do that to me is such a monumental achievement that so it's probably unfair to Guerrilla because like it's not like they reworked Killzone into something I cared about more. Like,
sure,
maybe, yeah, I mean it's in the same world, but like, yeah, I think
I would argue that purpose, right? That purpose,
right.
Like everything in God of War has a purpose. You have all these characters; they all have a purpose. Yep. All these storylines, they all have a purpose. Right. Whereas Horizon, I felt was very like one beat. Like here is Aloy's purpose, and you encounter folks, but like, do they have a purpose, or is their purpose just to encounter somebody?
Right.
Like I didn't feel that deep tied connection to sub characters or different stories. And I definitely at the end of Horizon Zero Dawn, I definitely wasn't sitting there going, I wonder the 18 million different ways they can take this franchise. I was like, okay, so here's where they're going to go with it. Whereas God of War, I can't wait to see what's next. There's no telling the amount of paths they can travel right now and where they can go and who will be there. It's insane. I mean, Tyler's over here. He keeps bringing up his biggest con is that some god wasn't in there. It's an attribute to the game. He's like, I need more.
Not enough characters at all.
I need more of they now have the path to give it to you. They can give it to you.
Characters that spoke in that game, maybe 12,
maybe
at most, if you think about it.
But what they had to say was important.
Yeah, but I could have had at least a little minor chatter in the back.
Matter. You'll get it. You'll get what you want eventually. I honestly would argue for the reason, too many gods. Like when I started this game, having known it was Norse, I was expecting Thor and Odin and like the very little I knew. The fact that I didn't get them, I think, was a great attribute. The fact that they made such a compelling story without having to go, because they so easily could have done it. That was such the easy way to take it. You're going to fight Thor now and have this awesome superhero battle. Now they get to set up a whole game to fight Thor. It's like very Marvel. Like there's an entire journey to set you at the feet of Thor, and we have no idea where that's going to go. It's amazing.
Did you guys go try to meet Freya after the game?
Nope.
No, I have not tried to do that yet.
It's mildly entertaining because you got Mimir, Atreus, and Kratos, just silently going up like the ramp from the boat, trying to go up there, and like Mimir's like, "Are you sure you want to do this?" Because she's probably kind of angry at you in her house right now, and Atreus was like, "She's probably trying to reanimate Boulder right now." And bring him back to life. And then Mimir, starts to go on this because he was like, just like you, Mimir. I'm like, boy, my brother, and because that's Hulk Hogan Mimir over here, brother. I'm actually well dead. I'm not alive. I'm reanimated. I know the difference. But you're right. She might be trying to reanimate him right now because she is a Vanir, which is known to have the ability to control time. She could totally revive him back to life with the power of bull crap.
Maybe that's the DLC you're looking for, Donnie. All right. So it's been 2 hours about. I think we probably should wrap this up. I think we probably could go for another 2 hours, to be honest.
Let's do it. All right. We are halfway.
I have Avengers to get to, so unfortunately we cannot continue to go on. But awesome. Well, hey, again, 2-3 words anybody wants to say before I get out of here? Okay, awesome. Well, hey, everyone, thanks so much for listening to this spoiler cast about God of War. Tyler has one thing he wants to say.
I just want to give a heads up that if for some reason you didn't actually play this game, but you wanted to watch it, very soon, by the time this podcast comes out, I have everything that I played recorded that I'll be throwing onto youtube.com/playsomevideogames. So look forward to that if you want to.
So if you are not a PS4 owner and you want to experience God of War, Tyler's got the hookup for you.
All 17 hours of it.
Oh, there you go. Thanks. It felt like way longer than 17 hours, but not in a bad way.
Yeah, the main storyline's about that, and then anything extra is it's definitely extra.
Yeah. Well, I did some extra stuff as we were going, but anyway. So again, hey everyone, thanks for listening. We always appreciate it. If you have some feedback, want to let us know your thoughts on the good old God of War, hit us up on Twitter at PSVG. Or also go to our Twitter. You can find the pin for our Discord there. You come chat with us about it there if you'd like to. We'd love to have you and chat more about this. As always, if you want anything for us to talk about, hit us up. Let us know. We're happy to talk about those things And
Always.
and as Kevin always says, and I'm going to add, because, you know, I like board games a lot, whether it be board games or video games, everyone, never stop gaming.